Why do we remember creatures we were never supposed to meet? Long before science textbooks and fossil records, before telescopes and radiocarbon dating, our ancestors carved their fears and visions into stone. They whispered stories by firelight, stories of winged serpents that blotted out the sun, of scaled titans that shattered trees like twigs, of beasts so vast their footsteps shook the ground beneath trembling feet. These weren't isolated tales. They weren't confined to one time, one land, or one imagination. They appeared everywhere, in every civilization, across oceans, continents, and millennia. Why? Science assures us that humans and dinosaurs are separated by 65 million years. The last tyrannosaur turned to dust long before the first human ancestor walked upright. This is not mythology. This is fact, confirmed by radiometric dating, fossil stratification, and the hard discipline of paleontology. We are told there is no debate. We are told that dragons never existed, at least not outside of metaphor. So why does humanity seem to remember them? The Chinese called them long, not evil beasts, but celestial beings of wisdom and power. They twisted through clouds, controlled weather, crowned emperors. In Mesoamerica, the great Quetzalcoatl, a feathered serpent, ruled as a god of wind and learning. In Europe, dragons coiled in the corners of illuminated manuscripts, hoarding gold and devouring knights. In Aboriginal Australian stories, the rainbow serpent carved riverbeds with its colossal body, bringing both life and destruction. And across the plains of North America, indigenous tribes spoke of the thunderbirds, winged beasts with talons large enough to carry a man skyward. Cultures separated by oceans, divided by language, isolated by time, yet they all told the same story. Skeptics dismiss this as coincidence. They say snakes and large reptiles naturally inspire fear, so humans, being pattern seekers, exaggerated them into monsters. Perhaps, they say, crocodiles and pythons provided the template. They say lightning and storms shaped the winged legends. They say the human mind is prone to invention. Is every story born of invention? Or is invention sometimes a form of memory? What if these legends were not creations, but echoes? Imagine living in a world without science, without fossils displayed neatly in museum glass. You stumble upon a skull buried in the earth, a skull larger than any living creature, lined with teeth as long as your hand. Would you not tell your children? Would your children not tell theirs? Bones do not stay hidden forever. Ancient peoples were not blind. They found fossils long before paleontologists gave them Latin names. In China, dragon bones were ground into medicine. In Greece, they were said to be remnants of titans. In North America, they were proof of thunderbirds that once ruled the skies. Long before we called them dinosaurs, we called them dragons. But there is another possibility, a more unsettling one. What if humans didn't just find their fossils, but saw them living? What if our deepest myths are not metaphors, the memories passed down from a time science refuses to acknowledge? The idea sounds absurd. Our rational minds reject it. There is no place in the official timeline for such coexistence. And yet, hidden beneath our skepticism, something stirs. A quiet unease. A tantalizing what-if. We do not remember saber-toothed cats with the same reverence. We do not weave legends of mammoths across every culture. Prehistoric mammals existed alongside our ancestors far more recently, yet they did not become godlike figures. Why, then, do dragons, creatures we supposedly never met, possess such power in our collective imagination? Perhaps it is simply narrative efficiency. A dragon is a perfect symbol, combining the strength of a lion, the flight of an eagle, the cunning of a serpent. It embodies chaos. It represents the edge of human comprehension. But symbols evolve from something. Archetypes do not appear from nothing. Even myths require raw material. Could it be that we carry within us a memory so ancient that science no longer recognizes it? Not a direct observation, but something deeper. A memory etched not in words or images, but in instinct. A genetic memory. The echo of fear passed down through nervous systems that once trembled at predators so colossal they blocked out the sun. There are theories, controversial, fringe, whispered at the edge of neuroscience, suggesting that trauma can be inherited. Those learned fears imprint themselves on DNA. Experiments with mice have shown that learned responses to certain scents can persist across generations. If fear can be inherited across decades, could it stretch across epochs? Did our distant mammalian ancestors, small, shivering creatures hiding in the shadow of reptilian titans, witness spectacles so terrifying that their terror became our inheritance? Maybe when we tell dragon stories, we are not inventing fiction. We are remembering them. Still, memory alone does not explain the uncanny specificity. Some depictions around the world resemble real dinosaur species, far too closely to be dismissed as coincidence. The temple walls of Taprom in Cambodia display what appears to be a stegosaurus, its distinctive plate-like spines etched with eerie clarity. Native American petroglyphs in the American Southwest show long-necked creatures strikingly similar to sauropods. In the jungles of Africa, tribes speak of the Mako Mbembe, a river-dwelling beast with a long neck and tail, uncannily reminiscent of a brontosaur. Are these forgeries? Misinterpretations? Or testimonies? Maybe we are overreaching. Maybe these similarities are accidents. Or maybe, just maybe, we are brushing dangerously close to a truth far older than our textbooks allow. This is where belief fractures. On one side stands science, grounded in evidence and chronology. On the other stands myth, fueled by imagination and inheritance. Each accuses the other of blindness. Science says myth is childish. Myth says science is arrogant. But what if neither is complete on its own? Perhaps dragons are not proof that humans lived among dinosaurs. Perhaps they are proof of something stranger. That memory is not confined to time. That the deepest truths are not always literal. That reality is layered. And our stories, even the impossible ones, point towards something real. Because whether dragons were beasts of flesh or beasts of mind, they existed. They lived with us. They shaped kings, prophets, warriors. They haunted nightmares and guided rituals. They connected the ground beneath our feet to the stars above our heads. So we return to the question, why do we remember creatures we were never supposed to meet? There are only three answers. Either we are imagining them, or we are misinterpreting their remains, or, in ways we cannot yet comprehend, we met them. And if even one of those possibilities is true, then our understanding of history, of reality, is incomplete. Which brings us to a crossroads. Do we cling to certainty, or do we dare step beyond it? Because if dragons are not just myth, but messages from an ancient past, then everything we think we know about our origins may be only half the story. And the other half? Waits buried in stone. Or sleeping in memory. If the legends are tempting. The science is uncompromising. Before we entertain anomalies, before we drift into speculation, we must first face the foundation, the official timeline of life on Earth. It is vast, staggeringly complex, and, according to modern science, utterly incompatible with the idea that humans and dinosaurs ever met. The story begins 4.5 billion years ago, with a molten Earth cooling into oceans and continents. Life emerged in the water, single-celled organisms first, then multicellular life, then creatures with bones, scales, fins. The Mesozoic era, often called the Age of Reptiles, unfolded between 252 and 66 million years ago. It is the epoch of titans, the reign of the dinosaurs. For nearly 186 million years, they dominated the planet in every form imaginable. Soaring pterosaurs in the skies, colossal sauropods stretching their necks above forests, predators like Tyrannosaurus rex ruling with jaws engineered like hydraulic machinery. Then, in an instant, they were gone. A mass extinction event, widely believed to be triggered by a 6-mile-wide asteroid striking the Yucatan Peninsula, ended their reign. Fires, tsunamis, shockwaves, and nuclear winter smothered the Earth. The planet went dark. Nearly 75% of all species vanished. That was 66 million years ago. And according to the Standard Model, humans did not arrive until astonishingly recently. Not millions of years later, but tens of millions. The first primates emerged roughly 55 million years ago. Hominins, our broader evolutionary family, appeared perhaps 6 million years ago. Homo erectus, with its larger brain capacity, stood upright about 2 million years in the past. Homo sapiens, our own species, walked the Earth only about 300,000 years ago, which means that by the time the first human looked at fire, took their first breath, or carved the first symbol into stone, dinosaurs had already been gone for 65 million years. The gap between us and them is not small. It is incomprehensibly vast. It is longer than the entire existence of primates themselves. And science has not merely assumed this, it has measured it. The dating systems used to construct the timeline are not guesswork scribbled over fossils. They are rooted in physics, chemistry, and geology. Radiometric dating measures the decay of unstable isotopes within rocks and bones, providing clocks as old as time itself. Uranium lead dating can determine the age of minerals billions of years old with extraordinary precision. Potassium-argon dating can measure volcanic layers surrounding fossil deposits to pinpoint when a creature lived or died. Even radiocarbon dating, limited to the last 50,000 years, helps organize the recent timeline of humanity. Fossils are found embedded in stratigraphy, layers of rock laid down like pages in a book, each one older than the last dot. So when paleontologists say humans and dinosaurs never met, they are not making a casual assertion. They are standing atop a mountain of evidence layered in bone, ash, and isotope decay curves. And yet, for all its certainty, the timeline is not unchallenged. For centuries, science has occasionally stumbled upon things that defy placement. Fossils found where they shouldn't be. Marks in stone that shouldn't exist. Art that resembles creatures long extinct. Most of these anomalies are swiftly dismissed, but not always explained. Consider the Paluxy River tracks in Glen Rose, Texas. In the 1930s, reports spread of fossilized footprints that appeared to show human tracks, running alongside or even overlapping those of dinosaurs. Photographs circulated. Creationists declared it proof of coexistence. Scientists countered that the supposed human tracks were misidentified, likely eroded dinosaur prints, altered by water and weather over time. Today, most paleontologists reject the Paluxy tracks as evidence. But the question lingers. Why did so many initially see humans when looking at them? Was it desperation for proof, or something more persistent in the human mind, longing for contradiction? Then there is the Teprome Stegosaurus carving in Cambodia, carved into a 12th century temple wall. One stone relief appears to depict an animal with a body like a lizard and a row of plates down its back, plates that strongly resemble those of Stegosaurus, a dinosaur believed to have gone extinct 150 million years before the carving was made. Skeptics argue the plates could be stylized lotus leaves or a decorative pattern. Believers argue the resemblance is too sharp to ignore, which is more irrational, to dismiss it instantly, or to consider that cultures may have known things we cannot account for. Across the American Southwest, petroglyphs etched into canyon walls depict towering, long-necked beasts beside hunters. Some carvings resemble pterosaurs with extended wings and crests. In the Amazon, tribal oral histories speak of creatures resembling theropods lurking in deep jungles. In Africa, accounts of the Mako Mbembe describe a creature with the body of an elephant, the neck of a giraffe, and the tail of a crocodile, eerily close to descriptions of sauropods. Is every carving a coincidence? Every legend is a metaphor? Every eyewitness is a fool? Perhaps, or perhaps not. Science insists we filter every anomaly through skepticism. That is reasonable. Without discipline, we descend into fantasy. But curiosity asks for more than dismissal. It asks for examination. Could all of these patterns truly be coincidence? Or is there something in them, not necessarily proof, but signal? To understand how anomalies persist, we must consider another flaw in our timeline, not in its method, but in its necessity. Scientific dating techniques are remarkably accurate, but they are also interpretive. Every measurement depends on assumptions, that decay rates remain constant, that contamination is absent, that stratigraphy has not been disturbed. And while these assumptions are generally safe, generally is not always. Which means our confidence is built not just on evidence, but on the absence of acceptable contradiction. So what happens when a contradiction appears? The answer is predictable. It is challenged, interrogated, and, if unresolved, often filed away as error. Is that good science? Yes, but is it also possible that, in our zeal for consistency, we sometimes protect the model rather than test it? That question is dangerous, not because it attacks science, but because it reminds us that science is a process, not a final truth. And that brings us to the most uncomfortable reality of all. The fossil record is not complete. Far from it. Paleontologists estimate that we have discovered less than 1% of all species that ever lived. Fossilization is incredibly rare. Entire eras lie undocumented. Gaps miles wide stretch across the evolutionary landscape. We assume no humans lived alongside dinosaurs because we have not found a single human fossil in Mesozoic rock. But absence is not the same as impossibility. Silence is not proof of emptiness. So where does that leave us? Some cling tightly to orthodoxy. Others throw themselves into ungrounded conspiracy. But perhaps there is a middle path, not of certainty, but of humility. Imagine if the timeline is correct, mostly. Dinosaurs did vanish millions of years before us. Our ascent was late in Earth's story. Yet imagine that, amid these long epochs, we occasionally find hints, footprints misplaced in stone, carvings impossible to explain, stories older than language itself. Do these anomalies rewrite history? Not yet. Do they invite us to look again? Absolutely. So we stand at a crossroads, not of evidence, but of interpretation. Science demands order. Imagination demands possibility. Which do we serve? Because if even one anomaly proves valid, one track, one carving, one legend grounded in history rather than myth, then our timeline fractures. Not fatally, but fundamentally. Not destroyed, but deepened. And that possibility brings us to the next battleground. Because where science withdraws, controversy grows stronger. We have examined the official story. We have seen its structure. Formidable, methodical, persuasive. But now we turn toward the shadows. Toward the forbidden evidence. The suppressed reports. The testimonies are too persistent to ignore. The question is no longer what history tells us. It is what history refuses to tell. We have followed the official story. We have heard the voice of science lay out its fossil timeline with calm certainty. Now we step into a different chamber. Not a laboratory, but a courtroom. A courtroom where every claim is challenged, every testimony cross-examined, and every anomaly dragged into the spotlight under suspicion. Here, the question isn't what is true, but what is allowed to be true. The first case enters the room like a thunderclap, soft tissue inside dinosaur bones. In 2005, paleontologist Dr. Mary Higby Schweitzer was studying the fossilized remains of a Tyrannosaurus rex unearthed in Montana. Fossilized, meaning stone, mineralized, transformed by pressure and time. But when she dissolved parts of the bone in acid, something impossible happened. She didn't find a stone. She found stretchy, elastic material, translucent vessels, structures resembling blood cells, collagen fibers, the kind found in living tissue. The reaction from the scientific world was immediate and violent. Some were stunned, others outraged. The fossil was supposed to be 68 million years old. No known natural process could preserve organic tissue that long. Her announcement was not met with applause. It was met with accusations. Contamination, they said. Lab error. Bacterial biofilm. Residue from something modern. Anything but real dinosaur tissue. Schweitzer ran more tests. Used more advanced imaging. Repeated the dissolution under stricter controls. The results were consistent. Organic structures persisted. Later, similar findings appeared in samples of Triceratops, Hadrosaurs, and Mosasaurs. Some scientists accepted it reluctantly, proposing new preservation models: iron particles, unusual burial conditions, mineral shielding. Others still resisted, not because they could disprove it, but because they could not accept it. The courtroom murmurs. The jury shifts in its seat. The prosecution of orthodoxy is not total, but doubt has entered the record. Now the second witness is called. Across Native American traditions, the thunderbird is not a metaphor. It is history. A colossal bird-like creature with wings that could block out the sun, talons capable of lifting whales from the ocean. The Lakota spoke of its thunderous wing beats. The Ojibwe feared its wrath. The Kwakwaka'wakw carved it into totems as tall as houses. Skeptics claim it's symbolic, a personification of storms. But the stories contain anatomical detail, not poetic flourish. Some accounts claim they hunted them, killed them. One story from the 1800s tells of two ranchers in Arizona allegedly shooting a massive winged beast, dragging it back to town, spreading its enormous wings across a barn wall. A photograph was rumored to exist, a famous one, even, but no one can find it now. Some say it was printed in old newspapers but later removed. Others say it's nothing but a myth invented long after the fact. But eyewitness reports persist into modern times. In 1977, in Lawndale, Illinois, 3 children claimed to see a bird so large it tried to carry an 8-year-old boy away. The story made local headlines. Biologists dismissed it as exaggeration. But the boy insisted. Decades later, he still insists. Could these be giant eagles? Misidentified condors? Perhaps. But what if, just what if, some relic of the past lingers in remote skies? We move to the third case, and the tension in the room sharpens. In the Congo Basin, along the riverbanks of the Likawala Swamp, local tribes have long spoken of a creature unlike anything alive today. They describe it consistently. Long neck, round body, whip-like tail. It spends its time in the water, rarely seen fully, but feared as a territorial beast, capable of killing hippos and men alike. Western explorers in the early 20th century documented these stories with fascination. Many dismissed them as folklore, but some, in secret, believed more. Explorers like Leonard H. Green and James Powell claim to have seen unusual ripples in the water from something enormous. In the 1980s, a Japanese film crew captured footage of a long, dark shape moving beneath the river's surface. There was no proof, only the hint of one. Scientists scoff. Africa has no dinosaurs. It is biologically impossible. But the jungle is vast. Much of the Congo remains uncharted, even today. If a living relic did survive, not a dinosaur, but something dinosaur-like, would we find it? Or would we laugh until the world moved on? The defense presents the anomalies. The prosecution rises. These are fantasies, they say. Wishful thinking, misinterpretations. They bring out counter-examples, stories of hoaxes, fraudulent relics, mistaken identities. They remind us of Piltdown Man, the infamous fake skull planted to deceive. They remind us that humans want to believe in forbidden things. We invent myths to fill our hunger. But the defense is not shaken, because belief cuts both ways. If one side is too eager to believe, the other may be too eager to deny. Every extraordinary claim is brought forward. Carvings of dinosaur-like creatures in ancient stones, dismissed as pareidolia. Fossil footprints beside human-shaped tracks, dismissed as erosion. Tales passed down for centuries, dismissed as metaphor. Dismissed, dismissed, dismissed. Not disproved. Not conclusively. Just dismissed. And now comes the final piece of evidence. Not an object, but a principle. Science demands skepticism. But skepticism without curiosity becomes censorship. Dismissal without examination becomes dogma. The courtroom falls silent. We are not asked to believe. We are asked to judge. Do these cases overturn the fossil timeline? Not yet. Do they demand we keep it open? Yes. Perhaps the soft tissue is preservation, not impossibility. Perhaps thunderbirds are exaggerations of eagles. Perhaps Mako Mbembe is a myth told by firelight. Or perhaps science has not looked long enough. Perhaps truth is not found only in labs and journals, but in outcry and persistence. Perhaps history speaks not just in facts, but in patterns. And if so, what do we make of these patterns? Because when cultures across continents speak of giant winged beasts, when tribes in unconnected lands describe long-necked river monsters, when stone carvings resemble creatures we only rediscovered through paleontology, we find ourselves staring at a possibility too ancient to dismiss and too dangerous to accept. So the judge, you, must decide. The official story remains intact. The anomalies remain unresolved. Science remains strong, but imagination is not fully silenced. And now we must ask the question that turns the courtroom into a cosmic stage. What if all of these contradictions can coexist? What if dinosaurs did not walk with humans in our past, but in another? What if history is not linear, but layered? What if the fabric of time wrinkles? What if memory can bleed across eras? And what if reality is not as stable as we believe? Because where science ends, another field begins. Not paleontology, not archaeology. But physics. The next section will not ask what lived before. It will ask what lives beside us now, hidden just beyond our perception. If the courtroom of forbidden evidence left us divided, this section invites us to rise above the debate entirely, not to argue what happened, but to ask what could happen given the fabric of reality itself. Maybe the question is not, did humans and dinosaurs ever coexist? Maybe the question is far stranger. Under what conditions could they have? To answer that, we must abandon the linear narrative of history and step into three vast frameworks, each one not just a theory, but a worldview: quantum multiverse, cyclic civilizations, simulation reality. Each one different, yet united by a single purpose: to make the impossible possible. Physics tells us something unsettling, that reality may not be singular. The universe we know, the history we follow, the rules we obey, Maybe only one expression of countless others. This is not mysticism. This is quantum mechanics. In the double-slit experiment, particles behave differently when observed. Electrons exist in multiple states at once, superposition until measured. The most daring interpretation, proposed by physicist Hugh Everett, suggests that rather than collapsing into one outcome, the universe splits into all possible outcomes, each one forming a parallel reality, which means that every possibility, no matter how unlikely, exists somewhere. There could be a world where the asteroid that struck Earth 66 million years ago missed. In that timeline, dinosaurs did not die. They continued to evolve. Some grew smaller, some grew larger, some possibly developed intelligence. In that world, humans may have emerged later or earlier. Or perhaps not at all, but maybe they did. Maybe, on some other Earth, humans and dinosaurs walk side by side. Maybe that version of us looks at fossils not as relics, but as neighbors. Maybe their legends are not memories, but field reports. And if the multiverse is real, then such worlds are not fantasy. They are mathematical inevitability. But here is the most mind-bending part. Quantum entanglement suggests that particles separated by vast distances remain connected, influencing each other instantaneously. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. But what if entanglement applies not just across space, but across timelines? What if fragments of memory, dreams, myths, visions bleed from one reality into another? What if dragons are not fossils we misread, but echoes from another Earth colliding with our own? The multiverse does not just allow coexistence, it ensures it somewhere. The only question is, do we receive whispers from those neighboring timelines? Without knowing? Maybe humans and dinosaurs didn't need alternate universes to meet. Maybe they simply needed more time. Or more cycles. Modern science insists civilization began roughly 6,000 years ago. Agriculture, writing, cities. Before that, we were hunter-gatherers. Before that, apes. Before that, dust. This timeline is presented as straightforward, ascending, singular, but ancient myths tell a different story. The Sumerians spoke of kings reigning for tens of thousands of years before the Great Flood. The Egyptians whispered of Zep-Tepi, the first time when gods walked alongside man. Hindu cosmology speaks of yugas, ages of rise and fall, repeated over millions of years. Plato wrote of Atlantis, a civilization destroyed by cataclysm 9,000 years before his time. Scholars call these symbolic. But what if they were historical? What if civilization is not a ladder, but a cycle? If Earth has faced extinction events repeatedly, and it has, then human history may not be the only human history. There could have been worlds before ours. Worlds are erased not just by water or fire, but by time itself. Most extinctions leave little behind. Erosion reclaims cities. Tech decays. Books turn to dust. Fossilization is rare. A civilization could rise to greatness and vanish without leaving a trace. And consider this. Dinosaur extinction was not instantaneous. It took time. Some species may have survived for thousands, even hundreds of thousands of years after the asteroid. Is it inconceivable that early primates or some proto-human intelligence crossed paths with lingering giants? Or worse, what if intelligence rose during the age of dinosaurs? Paleontologist Dale Russell once proposed a thought experiment. If Truden, a small bird-like dinosaur with a relatively large brain, had continued evolving, could it have become sapient? He sculpted a model, an upright, dexterous humanoid reptilian. It looked eerily like the reptilian figures of countless ancient myths. Could an earlier, intelligent species have risen during the reign of dinosaurs, built a fleeting civilization, and then disappeared, swallowed by extinction or buried deep beneath rock and ocean? If so, our legends of dragons may not come from distant memory or parallel worlds, but from ancient encounters retold across generations in distorted form. Maybe humans did not live among dinosaurs. Maybe something else did. And maybe that civilization, fallen long ago, whispered its memory into ours. If the multiverse gives us alternate realities and cycles give us alternate histories, this last theory gives us something even stranger: alternate rules. The simulation hypothesis, proposed by philosopher Nick Bostrom and entertained by tech leaders and physicists alike, suggests that our universe may not be material at all, but computational. A program, a construct, not metaphorically, but literally. The argument is simple. If any civilization, anywhere in existence, ever reaches the point where it can simulate consciousness and reality with perfect fidelity, then it will almost certainly run countless simulations of its past, of alternative histories, of speculative timelines, and statistically, if countless simulations exist, the odds that we are in the original base reality are nearly zero. So if reality is simulated, if physics is code, then timelines are not fixed. They can be loaded. History can be rewritten, glitched, layered. Imagine reality not as a timeline, but as software with version updates, overlapping archives, and corrupted data. Perhaps dinosaurs and humans never coexisted in the base code. But what if fragments of earlier versions, test builds, old simulations, abandoned scenarios, occasionally overlap with ours? A glitch in rendering could allow two eras to flicker across each other. A misplaced data call could insert a Thunderbird into recent memory. A memory leak could produce dreams of dragons. We treat legends as fiction. But what if fiction is residue? What if the ghost data of previous worlds haunts our reality? It sounds absurd until we remember how often our universe behaves like information. Black holes store entropy like hard drives. Quantum particles behave like binary logic. Space-time bends like code under computational load. The cosmic microwave background even resembles digital noise. So, perhaps myths are not lies, but system errors. Perhaps forbidden evidence is not a challenge to science, but to the assumption that this is the only version of reality that ever ran. So where does that leave us? 3 frameworks. 3 radical possibilities. The multiverse tells us there are Earths where humans walked with dinosaurs. Cyclic history suggests it could have happened here before. In a forgotten age. Simulation theory proposes it might still be happening now. Glitched fragments, overlapping reality. Do any of these theories prove anything? No. Do they expand what is possible? Absolutely. And that may be the real purpose of speculation, not to replace science, but to stretch it. Maybe we will never find a living dinosaur. Maybe no soft tissue will ever whisper the truth. Maybe no petroglyph will ever yield a confession. But the question remains, why are we haunted by a world science says never existed? Perhaps the answer is not in fossils, but in ourselves. Humanity is a species that dreams beyond its cage. We invent myths not because we are foolish, but because we are hungry. Hungry for origins. Hungry for connection. Hungry for wonder. Maybe dragons existed. Maybe they didn't. But the fact we keep searching for them tells us something deeper than any fossil bed can. We are creatures not only of flesh, but of possibility. And that brings us to our final question. If all of history is uncertain, if reality itself may be layered, fractured, or coded, then the final riddle is not, did humans live with dinosaurs? It is, what does it mean to be human in a universe where anything could be true? That is where we go next. We have traveled through bone and legend, through science and speculation, through timelines and simulations. We have met paleontologists and prophets, skeptics and believers. We have stood at the crossroads of certainty and dream. And now, before we leave this mystery behind, we must ask the only question that truly matters. Why do we care? Why does the thought of humans walking among dinosaurs ignite something so primal within us? Why does it stir not just curiosity, but longing? It is not merely because dinosaurs are impressive. It is because we are small dot, we modern humans, surrounded by screens and cities, insulated from darkness and silence, feel a quiet ache we rarely acknowledge. We live in an age where nearly everything is mapped, documented, categorized. The world feels known, predictable, shrinking. Our myths have been replaced by measurements, our fears by labels, our wonder by explanation. And yet, somewhere deep within, wonder refuses to die. The idea that our species, fragile, mortal, recent, might have once stood before creatures that towered like living mountains is more than historical speculation. It is contact with humility. To imagine standing in the shadow of a brachiosaur, or hearing the cry of a pterosaur echo across a blood-red sky, is to feel, for a moment, the true scale of existence. It is to remember that we are not the rulers of this planet. We are guests, arriving late to a world that thrived long before us, and will thrive long after. But perhaps the dragons we chase are not made of flesh. Perhaps we do not seek bone, but perspective. This question, did humans and dinosaurs ever coexist, is really a proxy for a greater one. Where do we belong in the story of life? Are we anomalies? Are we accidents? Are we inheritors of forgotten ages, bearers of memories older than speech? Or are we simply storytellers, forever reaching backward into time to find ourselves reflected in ancient beasts? Maybe the answer does not lie in fossils, but in symbolism. Dinosaurs are not just prehistoric animals. They are avatars of vastness. They represent power unbound, life uncontained, time ungraspable. To ask whether we once walked among them is to confess a deeper desire. We want to feel connected to the ancient. We want to stand on ground that trembles. We want to know that we, too, are part of something colossal. Even if science says no, even if no bone or carving ever proves coexistence, the question leaves us with a truth more powerful than any fossil could provide. We are walking among giants. Right now, not giants of scale, but giants of mystery. The fact that Earth existed for billions of years before us is a giant. The fact that consciousness exists at all, that matter can wonder about itself, is a giant. The fact that we can look at a stone and imagine a dragon is itself a form of resurrection. So, perhaps it does not matter whether humans ever walk beside dinosaurs. What matters is that we want to, because that longing reveals something sacred. It reveals that human beings are not satisfied with survival. We hunger for meaning. We are not content to live in the present. We demand access to eternity. We want to see all of time at once, to pull the past into the present, to stretch the limits of possibility until reality trembles. And so, whether or not the first people lived among dinosaurs, we continue to walk beside them in imagination, in myth, in the quiet spaces between sleep and memory. They march in our stories. They roar in our dreams. They perch on the edges of our explanations, daring us to expand our thinking just a little wider. Maybe that is their true purpose, not as creatures, but as teachers. They remind us that Earth was here long before our names were spoken. They remind us that mystery is not something to solve, but something to cherish. They remind us that we are small, and that smallness is not weakness, but birthplace. For humility is not the absence of power. Humility is the doorway to awe. So as we leave this question behind, let us carry not answers, but wonder. Let us remember that the past is not dead, that imagination is not deception, that curiosity is not childish. It is wholly dot because in the end, history is not a fixed line. Science is not a cage. Time is not a wall. They are invitations. And so we close with this: whether or not the first people walked with dinosaurs, we are all still walking with giants. Not in the ground beneath us. Not in the skies above us. But in the questions brave enough to lift their heads and roar across the silence.